Hi guys, Jermaine Harris here, founder of the Fast Coach Academy. And I get approached by lots of speakers, aspiring speakers, who talk about, they hear a lot about storytelling. They say, Jermaine, I want to get in there and I want to tell stories during my talks. I've read so much about it, I've heard it makes a real difference, keeps the audience engaged and allows you to relay and add depth to your message. And I see that's very true. The challenge I see a lot of is lots and lots of people are looking to relay stories, other people's stories, classic stories that audience members have often heard hundreds of times. Now, of course, these stories have value and we can be inspired by them. However, be bold enough to relate your own personal anecdotes and stories to the material that you're putting forward, because it'll gain even more engagement and intrigue in the story, because it will be the first time that your audience member is hearing it. I know that makes sense. So, for example, in the care sector work I've been doing, in particular with Hallmark Care Homes, they've married my training with some education around the fish philosophy. You can Google it if you've never heard of the fish philosophy. Now, one of the aspects of the fish philosophy is choose your attitude. Choose your attitude. Now, of course, there's hundreds, maybe even thousands of classic stories that many people have heard when it comes to a positive choice of attitude. And what I do, I relay some big choices of attitude I've had to make in my life, and I tell a story of how that happened, and even some small moments, anecdotes from my own life that I can turn into a story to help show that I walk my talk, I live the material, and I do choose my attitude in those moments. I'll give you an example. So when I delve in to elaborating on this choose your attitude portion of the fish philosophy, how can it make a difference to your own life, the energy within your body and the difference you can make to team members, I talk about a time that was not long after the Brexit vote that we all had to make. That's going well so far, right? And I was driving not too far away from where I live, or where I used to live rather, in Cardiff, in South Wales. And I was driving along, happily, beautiful sunny day. And I was driving along, and I was actually thinking deeply about a session I was going to do for Admiral Insurance down in Cardiff Town Centre. And I wasn't paying attention. And you know that when you're sort of driving along and the sun's hitting you and your mind is everywhere. The voice in your head is going, the pictures are going, your attention is everywhere apart from the road. I know you know those times. Sometimes you get somewhere and you don't even know how you got there. And I pulled out of a junction without paying attention to what was coming from my right, and it was an awful piece of driving. The van screeched to a halt, just about avoided making contact with my car, and I wound down the window. I said, look, my friend, I'm so sorry, I was miles away. That's totally my fault. And the gentleman, we'll call him, in the white van, he looked out of his window and he shouted at me. He said, I bet you effing voted Remain, didn't you, you N-word? Now, when I go on this story, I talk about how I'd be lying if 7 years ago I wouldn't want to jump out, rip him out of his van and perhaps get violent. And I'd also be lying if I didn't have that fire of rage build up within me for that first second or two. But then I kept my hands on the wheel. I calmly looked at him and I said, I hope your day improves, my friend. And then I just drove off. Now that story is a story that you've just heard for the first time. My audience members have always heard for the first time. And I use it as an anecdotal personal story of where I had to choose my attitude. And then I talk about how that kept my energy high for the day, kept me in a positive, relaxed space. And I didn't take any of that angst or anger or racism with me for the rest of the day. But the point is this, it's a very personal anecdotal story that makes the point that your audience will stay with you on because they haven't heard it before. What stories could you tell to add value to your keynote talks and presentations? I'll see you very soon.